Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on another great day for the Wilmer Eye Institute, where we celebrate some special people. And as part of doing that, we're delighted that we have with us today the Burkholders and the Murphy family, and Dr. Bryn Burkholder's nephews, who are going to play an important role today in our ceremony. And we have our executive vice dean, Dr. Bryn M, and I guess the person who made this day possible is actually unfortunately not with us, and that's Antoinette Rose Schifanelli, who passed away and decided to name the Wilmer Institute in her legacy, create a lasting legacy, link her name with that of Wilmer's. This will be the 10th what we call Rising Professorships. We started that about 3 years ago, and we'll celebrate the 10th, one of those today, and the 11th tomorrow. So these are a little different than most of the traditional professorships that tend to occur later in a faculty member's career, and in part are a recognition of tremendous achievements that they've made. These rising professorships are intended to accelerate the careers of young faculty members like Dr. Burkholder and give them a leg up in their achievements. So we're delighted that this can happen. For those of you who are not academics, full-time academicians, I feel sorry for you. But also I'll just explain that in academic institutions like ours, it's we say three-legged stool: teaching, research, and patient care. And Wilmer cannot afford to be mediocre in any one of those three things. We have to strive for excellence in all three. And most of the rising professorships that we've dedicated to date have been for people that are mostly scientists, have a grant called the K Award, which means they're 75–80% in research. But we also, with this professorship, recognize outstanding, what we call clinician educator. The person who's not only the outstanding doctor, but also teaching the young doctors all the skills that will enable them to be very successful in their profession. So every division chief at Wilmer had the opportunity to nominate a candidate, and a committee reviewed them. And I don't want to brag about the Wilmer Institute, but actually that's a lie. I do want to brag about the Wilmer Institute and do so regularly. But I would say that the Wilmer Institute is so packed full of excellent teachers that the average teaching faculty member at Wilmer would be the person who would get the teaching awards at the typical ophthalmology department in the country. And I've worked in two other departments outside of this one. And Dr. Burkholder was the top vote getter of this committee. But what particularly stood out to me was what the residents had to say when I asked them what they thought. And they used the term stood apart, that Dr. Burkholder stood apart from other faculty nominees, because when there was a really tough case, literally my chief residents, who pretty much know everything, would say, you better show this patient to Dr. Burkholder and see what she thinks. So that's a real tribute, and they didn't hesitate for a second. Now, I'll say every person nominated deserved recognition for being an outstanding clinician educator. So to rise to the top is great. It probably shouldn't surprise us, because Dr. Burkholder is a marathoner, one of these super disciplined people that we all know that can run miles and miles and miles, and have that discipline and self-drive. So I'd like to say a few words about the person who's not with us today on this wonderful occasion, and that's Antoinette Rose Schifanelli, that beautiful name. She would go by Tony. Her friends would call her Tony, we're told. And the history of Italy, where her parents came from, in the early 1900s was a difficult one. It was a country in a lot of chaos and poverty. Mussolini declared dictatorial powers in Italy in 1925. Under the fascist government, people did not have freedom. And so there was a mass migration at this time from Italy to the United States, 4 million people. And I grew up in New Jersey, New York, and I assumed there were at least 40 million of them up there. The Italian-American community is very prominent there. But her parents didn't go or didn't stay up in New York or New Jersey. They came to Maryland, to Annapolis, where there is an Italian-American community there. Her parents, I have to tell you, because I love their names, Laudomia Casanova was her mom, and Giuseppe Schifanelli was her dad. And they came from Sicily, and they were blessed with a baby daughter in 1929, Antoinette Rose. And she was a tough woman. We're told she was a very proud and grateful American. And like the children of a lot of immigrants, she worked very hard. And she became a member of the engineering department of the Chesapeake and Potomac Telephone Company in Annapolis. And she was very proud that she became the first woman usher at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Annapolis. And if there are any Catholics in the audience, you might agree with me, it's pretty rare to see a woman usher in the Catholic Church, but even today. And she was very proud of the fact that apparently on trips to, and mentioned this to her friends, on trips to both New York and Italy, people recognized her because she'd been this usher, a woman usher at this church, that was such a unique thing, and she felt quite an honor. And I have this theory that in part this was related to her experience of her parents from Italy, but she relished the opportunity to engage in politics in the United States. She was very active politically, and she represented her union, the union of the telephone company, at political events here in Maryland. So she really relished the opportunity to exercise her rights as a citizen. So she's, I think, a great example of the hardworking children of immigrants, and I also notice a high percentage. Ophthalmology residency is incredibly competitive. We get 600 applicants for our 5 slots every year, and we have this committee, and they work really diligently to decide who to accept into Wilmer. And I find we have wouldn't you say, Dr. Retta, we have a much higher percentage of children of immigrants in the Wilmer residency than would be you'd expect from the general population, because they work so hard. They all got perfect 4.0s. Their parents have really instilled in them a love of education. And that, I think, was something that really appealed to Ms. Schifanelli. And I guess she didn't tell us in advance. We didn't know that she had planned to do this for Wilmer during her lifetime. We only learned after she passed, and it's not uncommon. But as a result, I didn't get the chance while she was alive to thank her for doing that. But I think it's a sign that we're on the right path, that we're doing the right thing for patients, and that people would be so extraordinarily generous. And I believe that there's sort of this understanding that they'll make this give this tremendous support to Wilmer. And in return, some brilliant young faculty member, and in the future, other brilliant young faculty members will do great things to teach and take care of patients and write their papers and do all those good things. So we'll be honoring Antoinette Rose's name at Wilmer for hundreds, hopefully thousands of years, and it'll make a difference, this rising professorship, as have others. So it's now my pleasure to ask to come up to the podium our Executive Vice Dean, Dr. Landon King. Landon.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, and good afternoon to everyone. You know, it is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Certainly on the other side of this wall, that's true, but indeed in here. This is really a remarkable occasion. It's a privilege to be here with you. I'd like to offer my thanks to everyone who's here today. We're grateful that so many of the faculty, the friends of the department leaders, donors, other important members of the Johns Hopkins Medicine and Wilmer Eye Institute communities have taken time to join us for this very special occasion. On behalf of the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, I'm honored to help celebrate the dedication of the Antoinette R. Schifanelli Rising Professorship in Ophthalmology for our inaugural recipient, Dr. Bryn Burkholder. Endowed professorships at Johns Hopkins support both creativity and stability, enabling a great academic medical center like ours to sustain its forward progress. The generosity of supporters of the Wilmer Eye Institute, paired in a very powerful way with faculty of the caliber of those that we have at Wilmer, allows Wilmer to serve as a model for other departments of ophthalmology around the world. We're grateful to Ms. Antoinette Schifanelli for bequeathing such a generous gift to Wilmer, and because of her generosity, we are here today to establish this professorship. This professorship provides a tremendous career-enhancing opportunity for its inaugural recipient, Dr. Burkholder. Equivalent to Wilmer's traditional professorships for senior faculty members, as Peter was noting, rising professorships equip our young investigators with extraordinary resources at the beginning of their careers, which accelerates the productivity and impact of our young researchers, whose work will benefit patients today and into the future. Today, we're here to celebrate and honor Dr. Burkholder and congratulate her on her many achievements. Dr. Burkholder is a highly committed faculty member who has been recognized for her exceptional teaching abilities and her dedication to shaping the next generation of ophthalmologists. With over a decade of experience in resident teaching, Dr. Burkholder has mentored numerous uveitis fellows and residents, nurturing their growth in both clinical practice and academic pursuits. Dr. Burkholder's influence extends well beyond Wilmer and Johns Hopkins, as evidenced by her involvement in the American Academy of Ophthalmology and her efforts to educate non-ophthalmologists, maybe even me, about uveitis, fostering fruitful interdisciplinary collaborations. With this rising professorship, I have no doubt that Dr. Burkholder will achieve groundbreaking new advances to address some of the world's most challenging global health challenges, and continue her work in training and collaborating with residents and new faculty members. Congratulations, Bryn. Because the endowment for a professorship is held and administered by the university trustees, professorships are formally presented to the university. So on behalf of Johns Hopkins Medicine as the Executive Vice Dean, I formally present the Antoinette R. Schifanelli Rising Professorship in Ophthalmology to Johns Hopkins University.
On behalf of Johns Hopkins University, it is my great pleasure to formally accept the Antoinette R. Schifanelli Rising Professorship. I'm immensely proud to recognize the formal establishment and dedication of this Rising Professorship. Those at Wilmer who hold Rising Professorships conduct some of the most significant and high-impact research, and they bring considerable prestige to the Johns Hopkins name through their collaborative, multidisciplinary work. Their work makes this a great university, and their ability to chart new courses of research and patient care comes in no small part from the reliable support of an endowment. Endowments are truly the foundation on which our success is built. On behalf of the university, congratulations on this terrific achievement, Dr. Burkholder. Thank you for your contributions to medical research and patient care at Wilmer, and for the work you will continue to do long into the future.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer Thorne, and I am the chief of uveitis and the division of ocular immunology. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the inaugural recipient of the Antoinette R. Schifanelli Rising Professorship in Ophthalmology, Dr. Bryn Burkholder. When Peter began talking about this particular Rising Professorship and that it was designed, or that the goal was to recognize clinician educator, or people that have true excellence in teaching of residents and fellows, as well as seeing patients, sort of that master clinician, if you would. He actually commented that he kind of envisioned this to be something like Dr. Nick Iliff. And some of you may remember Nick. He is retired as one of our sort of pillars of Wilmer, spending his career here in oculoplastics, and was a consummate clinician, teacher, and gentleman. And aside from the gentleman part, simply put, my mind immediately went to Bryn. I thought that is sort of the mold in which she has led her career thus far, in terms of what she loves to do and in what she gives to Wilmer. So Bryn actually joined our faculty in 2011 as our fellow. She was our fellow in uveitis after finishing her residency here at Wilmer. Then she stayed on, much to our luck. Maybe she would say otherwise, but to our definite luck, she stayed on 2012. And since the beginning of her practice, she's been what would be considered a full-time clinician. So 80% of her time is in our clinics or in the OR. A day a week is spent doing other academic things or trying to tidy up and take care of the bits and parts of taking care of patients on those other 4 days, as anybody that takes care of patients realizes happens. She has spent the overwhelming part of her career at the East Baltimore campus, which takes care of the sickest and most severely affected patients with uveitis and ocular inflammation. And over the time, she has sort of become expert in not only infectious disease, but non-infectious uveitis, ocular inflammatory disease, various treatments, including regional therapies, systemic therapies, surgical interventions to treat these very highly complex patients, often in collaboration with multiple other subspecialists within Wilmer, but also people throughout the School of Medicine. And I think that a lot of people believe her to be a go-to person in the care of these patients because she's willing and available to help, and because she's really, really good at what she does. Her patients also adore her. Her patients consistently describe her as compassionate, responsive to their needs, professional, knowledgeable, caring, patient, and maybe most impressively reassuring. Bryn has also been a go-to person for the division in terms of residents and their education, and that started from the beginning of the time that she joined our faculty. She's been our division educational champion since that program began in 2012, and over the years has developed and formalized the curriculum for uveitis, and as well as evolved it over the years to really make it fit with the needs of current residents and other demands of the ACGME and other regulatory bodies. For those of you that have worked in a formal way with residency education, you'll know that it has changed dramatically over the last 10 or so years, and that this is really actually a labor of love and a lot of effort that kind of goes behind the scenes, after hours, before hours, weekends. To supplement some of that time that's sort of face to face, she has been sort of collecting a compendium of lectures, slides, relevant literature, case reports, what have you, to sort of build this uveitis center within the residency teaching portal. Many of the subspecialties have this, but Bryn's basically built this for uveitis from scratch, including a collection of videos of different surgeries and procedures where she has narrated them so that people can go online and look, oh, okay, well, that's what an Ozurdex injection is supposed to look like, okay? I believe this is quite helpful to our current residents, but I think that maybe one of the other things that sort of gives you an idea of its importance is that a lot of her information has been published with the course, the basic techniques in ophthalmic surgery, which is part of the clinical science or the basic science courses, the books that are published through the American Academy of Ophthalmology. So in fact, what she's teaching is not only affecting or helping our residents, it's able to be accessed nationwide and helps others that may not have those opportunities in their own residency program, particularly given the shortage of people that have expertise in uveitis. Somehow, Bryn also manages to work with residents, fellows, med students on occasion as well to write case reports, case series to help them be able to kind of get their feet wet in clinical research. She assists with their writing. A lot of these series and reports actually come from observations that come from her own clinical patients. Still, probably my all-time favorite has to do with tattoo-associated uveitis, which was sort of an observation that she came to in her clinic and put together a series of cases, asking other faculty to contribute, and then generously included them on the paper, as well as doing a significant amount of utzing to get the fellow that was in charge of that project to get it done. But it turned out to be a really interesting clinical, insightful observation that really sort of sparked a lot of interest, not only in this country, but internationally. However, I think to maybe close, some of the best things, or the best accolades that I can think of come directly from the residents. And I think Peter highlighted this, that they basically kind of go on, that she's an amazing mentor and a great teacher, not only in the teaching of uveitis, but beyond that, that she's willing to teach and help out, even when maybe it's not for her to do, that she's very accessible, that she sort of has a very sort of didactic approach so that residents are allowed to sort of shine and grow in their learning. I think one of my favorite ones was that she's available to staff difficult clinical cases, brought to bear her deep clinical experience and specialty training to each encounter, but still allowed me to stretch my diagnostic learning, reasoning, and contribute to the management plans in an independent but supervised fashion. I also tended to like the one that said that she's willing to discuss cases but kind of keeps it short and doesn't dwell, which I think probably we could all learn a little from. So clearly, Bryn is a fabulous clinician educator, and it is truly wonderful to have this professorship that will allow her funding that she can focus on some of these aspects of teaching and mentoring that are so important to her career and so important to future ophthalmologists as they come through our residency program. I think Peter had mentioned as well that funding for education is less common than what we would expect for funding for research. And I am really thrilled that Bryn has been given this opportunity, as I have no doubt that this professorship will support and accelerate her career, which is already rising. Congratulations, Bryn.
Thank you, Dr. Thorne. We appreciate the opportunity to learn more about Bryn's accomplishments. Indeed, as best I can tell, as an undergraduate alumnus of Wake Forest, the only blemish on an incredibly stellar career is that she was an undergraduate at Duke. But as evidenced by us being here today and referencing the dedication, commitment, intention that Peter talked about in his comments, Bryn has not let that hold her back. So, Bryn, I have no doubt that with the support of the Antoinette R. Schifanelli Rising Professorship, you will make even more rapid progress across all of your career goals, certainly the education and the impact that Peter and Jennifer have spoken to, but also the other dimensions of what you do and what you bring to our patients and what you bring to our community. So thank you for that. On behalf of the School of Medicine, this is when you get to come. Sorry, I should have done that earlier. I'm pleased to present this medallion to you, Dr. Burkholder, as a symbol of this honor and in celebration of your installation as the inaugural recipient of the Antoinette R. Schifanelli Rising Professorship in Ophthalmology. Congratulations.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you all for coming. This is a little bit overwhelming. First, I want to acknowledge Antoinette Schifanelli and her family who gave this generous gift to Wilmer. I never met Mrs. Schifanelli. She passed away in 2016, but I discovered her obituary online, and it is a real treat. It's one of the best obituaries I've ever read, and among other things, features a jump roping squirrel. It was clear that she led a very full life and was well loved by her community and her family. There was one line that particularly struck a personal chord with me. It said that when the weather was nice, she roller skated to school. And anyone who knows me well knows that I love to rollerblade. And if I could figure out a way to rollerblade to work every day when the weather was nice, I absolutely would do that. But don't worry, Jen, I've broken enough bones. I'm not going to do that. But my point is, I think that I would have really liked Mrs. Schifanelli, and I'm very grateful to her family for this gift. This professorship recognizes teaching, and I can say without a doubt that I wouldn't be here without many important teachers, mentors, and role models in my life that I want to mention here today. My two most important teachers are my parents, Tom and Judy Burkholder, who are here today. They're both physicians, and a big reason why I got into medicine. What some of you might not know about me is that for most of my childhood and through my junior year of college, I was sure that I was going to be a veterinarian. And then I attended a summer program at Tufts Vet School, and I realized it wasn't quite the right fit, and I pivoted to human medicine. Now, my dad practiced ophthalmology in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is my hometown. So I grew up around a lot of eyeball talk and eyeball videos. My dad recorded his surgical videos on VHS tapes. I think we're all old enough to remember those. And so when we had a project for school that required making a video, we'd record over one of his old surgery tapes. What we didn't consider was that when our video finished playing for the class, suddenly the microscope view of a giant eyeball, usually with a blade or a phaco tip inside, filled the screen. And so our classmates would yell and cover their eyes, but I always thought those videos were really kind of cool. I got to spend some time with my dad in his clinic, and what I remember most was his way with patients. He took his time with them and listened to them and answered their questions. And he was one of the earliest role models I had for the patient-physician relationship, and I'm grateful for that. And then there's my mom, who practiced internal medicine, and she was only one of a handful of women in her entire class, and I always thought that was so brave, and I admired how she pursued what was then a really unconventional career path. Fast forward several decades to my med school class, where I was in the first class at Penn to have more women than men, and my residency class, where I was in the first Wilmer class to have more women than men. And so I'm really grateful for women like my mom, who were bold enough to ask for a seat at the table. When I interview applicants for residency and fellowship, I'm frequently asked, why did you stay at Wilmer after your training? I tell them there are two big reasons. The first is the uveitis group here. There aren't many places in the country where I can have a group of uveitis colleagues, and especially such a great group. And I'm grateful to Jen Thorne for hiring me and for mentoring me, and grateful to my colleagues for their support and their advice. And the other reason I stayed at Wilmer after training was for the residents. I've had the privilege to teach dozens of talented residents over the years, and fellows too. They're all incredibly smart and curious and hardworking, also incredibly savage when I pull out the Jeopardy board at our didactic sessions, and then the claws come out. But they are a competitive bunch in all the best ways. For me, one of the best parts of teaching is watching the residents evolve over their time here and getting to be a small part of their development. In the first week of July, ever since I was a fellow, I gave the Introduction to Uveitis talk to a row of brand new first-year residents. And one of the first slides I show them has a picture of me from 2008, when I first came to Wilmer. 2008, yikes. It's a picture of me, wide-eyed, fresh-faced, eager, ready to learn, not jaded at all. And there's an animated thought bubble over my head that says, what's a uvea? Because I had that thought not long ago, or 16 years ago, but we're not counting. I didn't know what a uvea was, and it turns out it's not really one thing, but a collection of things. But my point to the residents is, we all start out in a place where we don't know much about the eye, and in 2008, I certainly wouldn't have guessed that 4 years later, I would be a specialist in the uvea, but that discovery is part of what makes residency fun and exciting. Speaking of becoming a uveitis specialist, I'm going to digress for a minute and share a recent story that's a callback to what I told you about wanting to be a veterinarian. So recently I found myself in a veterinary ophthalmologist's office. I adopted a kitten in January, and 2 months later I was convinced that one of its eyes had changed colors. But I thought it was equally possible that I was just being a crazy person, and so I waited, and a couple days later, sure enough, looked back to normal. 2 months later, the other eye changed colors. And so that's how I ended up in the ophthalmologist's office. And she did the whole exam, a tiny little slit lamp, fluorescein on the cornea, indirect to look at the retina. I thought it was fascinating. The cat absolutely did not. And then the vet, after she finished her exam, said, your cat has uveitis. I said, you've got to be kidding me. I was telling the story to my colleagues at our division meeting last month and lamenting that uveitis, this very uncommon little disease, follows me everywhere. I see patients with it all day. I go home, my cat has uveitis. And one of my very wise, older colleagues, Dr. Jabs, offered this helpful suggestion. Maybe you're the vector, Bryn. And so yes, in the words of the great Ms. Taylor Swift, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. Now, a few days after the veterinary ophthalmologist appointment, a box appeared at my door with no return address and no note. And in it was a textbook titled Feline Ophthalmology. I figured out later that my dad thought that that would be a pretty funny thing to send. But I bring up this story because I want to let Dr. McDonald know that I'm now also a feline uveitis specialist. And soon I'm going to make a pitch for Wilmer to have a feline uveitis division. Just something to think about, Peter. Anyway, I was talking about the joy of seeing residents develop into competent ophthalmologists over their time here. It's June now, and that's my favorite time of year at Wilmer because I have the opportunity to operate with third-year residents about to graduate. And It's such a delight. I was operating with Sidra Zafar last week, and she's skilled and efficient and doesn't need me anymore. And I had the chance to just watch her operate, and my heart rate was low, and it was smooth sailing. Which brings me to someone else I need to thank, someone who coached me through many cataract surgeries, and that's one of my mentors, Dr. J.P. Dunn. If his heart rate was ever low while I was operating, it was only because of the beta blockers. Every resident remembers his or her first cataract surgery. It's a big deal. I did my first cataract surgery with JP, and JP is one of those rare attendings who did almost all of his cataract surgeries with residents or fellows. And now that I'm on the other side of the scope, I have an entirely different appreciation for that. And although JP's demeanor in the OR was not, shall we say, serene, I have nothing but gratitude for my time in the OR with him. I was reminded of this 2 weeks ago when I got a text from one of our former residents in Astro, who gave me permission to share this. She texted me, "I had a super complex case yesterday, but then I had to get back on the horse and do 15 more cataracts." She went on to say that she was thinking about a time when we were in the OR together, doing what proved to be a complicated case. And she expected that I wouldn't be letting her operate anymore that day after that, but I told her to keep going. We talked about how in medicine things don't always go perfectly, but one of the most important things you can do for your patient is to learn from that experience and then focus your full attention on the next patient and the next surgical case. And she said in her text, "Thank you for that. It meant a lot then, still does." My first thought after reading that was, that made my day. My next thought was, damn, Anna, 15 cataracts in one day? Like, you go, girl. But seriously, this is a great example of how teaching residents is the gift that keeps on giving. I told Inna to pass on that lesson if she ever has the chance, and of course I texted JP to thank him because he was the one who taught me that lesson. This is how we learn and pass it along generation to generation. And so this time of year more than any, I'm reminded of how much the residents accomplish here and how they're going to take that out into the world and do good things for people. And my hope is that maybe along the way, they'll think of something that I've taught them in the OR, or maybe they'll be seeing a uveitis patient in their clinic, and they'll hear my voice in their head telling them not to order that ANA. And maybe they'll listen. A few more thank yous before I wrap this up. Over the past 15 years, I've watched the Wilmer residency develop and improve in big ways, in large part due to the efforts of my former co-residents, Devya Shrikamaran, Shamima Sikder, and Fosca Wareta, who's now the program director. Fosca and I have known each other since day one of our residency. She is the hardest worker I've ever met, a fantastic surgeon, and someone who's been a friend and endlessly supportive of me. And my brother-in-law and sister, who are two very smart engineers and, more important, compassionate and wonderful human beings. They used to live thousands of miles away, but moved to Baltimore a few years ago with my nephews, Pax and Nolan, and I'm so glad they're here in Baltimore. My sister teaches undergraduate engineering at Hopkins, and I'm so proud of her. And shout out to my nephew, Pax. It's his 9th birthday today. So, with all that being said, I just want to reiterate how grateful I am for this opportunity and to all of you for coming today. I'm very lucky to have so many of my favorite people here today. Thank you.
Well, Bryn, congratulations, you deserve this, and the residents, what they have to say about you speaks volumes to what you do for them. So we're going to have there's one thing standing between us and the reception, our cocktail party, and that is that we have to do the unveiling. And I understand the birthday boy and his brother are going to step up and help us along with Bryn and her family, and we have photographers ready. So guys, can we have you come on up and help out your aunt? And Dr. Burkholder, you need to be up there next to these guys here. Okay, 3, 2, 1, yeah. You know, you didn't really pose stay for much in the way of photography, so we'll have to stage those later. So thank you all for joining us for this wonderful event, and I'd like to ask you to stay and have some refreshment and congratulate our awardee and her proud parents and her proud sister and her proud nephews. And thank you all for being with us on this great day for Wilmer. Thank you.